I like exploring. From state parks to virgin wilderness, I love going out and seeing things. I used to go alone a lot, just communing with nature and really roughing it. But thankfully, on the day in question, I had someone with me. Jake hadn't wanted to go, had said he had a bad feeling about it, but I insisted. Jake is kind of a shut-in, and I thought that some fresh air and sunshine might help get out of his shell a little. Plus, it was spring, and who doesn't like to go hiking in spring? We were hiking in North Georgia, a state park I won't name so you don't go looking for it. It's beautiful out there. There's a river running through the gorge, places to swim and picnic, rock walls to climb if you're feeling bold, and lots of nature to commune with. We had come to the end of the usual trail, the river continuing on even if the marked trail didn't, and Jake looked at me oddly when I didn't turn around and go back. "I want to see what's up ahead," I told him. I had never been beyond that, but I had always wanted to. "No way," he said. "That's out of bounds. The signs say there are holes or unstable terrain." "So?" I asked. "So it means it is dangerous. I know you're all about exploring, Chuck, but I'm not trying to die today." "Oh, come on," I prodded. "Just a little bit further. Don't be a wimp." He looked like he wanted to go back, but my heckling had gotten to him a little. "Okay," he said, "but if it looks bad, we turn around. Understand?" Yeah, I said, waving him off as we went past the signs and onto the unmarked trail. The signs were needless anyway, I thought. Georgia is swampy in some places, and sinkholes and subterranean caves aren't that uncommon. We just avoid the soft areas and we'd be fine. I had read online that there was a waterfall at the end of the trail, but I had never seen it. Some hikers said it was beautiful and that it went all the way back up the cliff, which would be a pretty long drop for a waterfall. I wanted some pictures for my travel blog, and as we walked down the trail, I knew this was going to be a hike we'd both remember for years to come. I must not have been watching where I was going very closely, because all the warning I got was a little cracking sound before I was suddenly in free fall. I was watching the hole in the ceiling get smaller and smaller as I fell, and then everything went black for a little while. When I opened my eyes, that circle of light above me was more like a spotlight. I groaned as I tested my limbs, my back, and my neck, and found myself mostly in good shape. My head hurt, but my arms and legs still worked. I had fallen onto some kind of moss, something that had probably saved my brains from being splattered all over the floor, and as I lay there staring up into the ceiling, I saw a silhouette impose itself over some of the light. "Chuck, thank God. I thought you were dead. I'm trying to get the Rangers, but I can't get a signal. Do you break anything?" I sat up a little, rubbing my head where a knot was forming. I felt a twinge of pain in my back, but nothing too bad. I was smart enough not to push it, though, lest I mess myself up further and unrepairable. I don't know. My back, I think. Well, that's better than most people after they fall into an underground cave, I guess. Unfortunately, I got all the climbing hooks and you got all the rope. I'm gonna head back up to the swimming hole and see if I can get some help. Hang tight. I'll be right back. Before I could say anything, Jake was gone, and I was left with nothing but the moss and the darkness around me. I didn't know how big the cave was, if I was in a cave at all, but the blackness seemed deep and impenetrable. As I lay there, the pain beginning to seep into my body, I thought I heard something. It was slight, no more than a tickle on the senses, but it was definitely something. It was like something with claws walking quietly on stone, like a rat but bigger than usual. I thought it was my imagination at first, but as it circled my spot like a shark preparing to strike, I realized I wasn't imagining it. I lay as still as I could, hoping that whatever it was would decide that I wasn't interesting or edible. But when it spoke, I was taken off guard. It sounded like a woman, like a young, pretty woman. "Hello?" I stayed quiet, not sure what was going on, hoping it was a delusion or a hallucination. "Is someone there?" It sounded real enough, not like any of the voices I had ever heard in a daydream or a regular dream, and despite myself, I decided to answer. "Hello?" There was silence for several long breaths, and then it spoke again. "Are you from up there?" she asked, and I assumed she was pointing to the ceiling. "Yeah, my name's Charles. What's yours?" Silence, silence, and then it spoke again. "I don't have one. No one has ever called me anything." That was weird. I didn't know anyone who didn't have a name. It made me wonder how long she had been down here, and who had left her down here. Had she fallen into one of these subterranean tunnels like I had? Had she gotten trapped without a way out? I asked her, but after 2 long breaths, she told me she didn't know. "I don't remember ever not being down here. It's my home, and if I lived up there, it was a very long time ago." The long pauses between conversations were a little weird, but I put it out of my mind. Clearly, she didn't get a lot of chances to talk to people, and she was just remembering how to make conversation. There was nothing wrong with that. In fact, I was glad she had found me. I didn't want to be down here all alone, and maybe I could help her get out once Jake came back. "Why don't you come over here into the light?" I asked, patting the stone beside my moss bed. "That way I can see you." Silence, silence, then speech. "I don't really like the light," she confided. "It hurts my eyes and it burns my skin." That made sense, I thought. If she had been down here long enough, then she was probably kind of sensitive to the light. I remembered reading about people who live in the dark too long and go blind when they take them in the sun, and I felt foolish for asking. It was really more my sense of vanity anyway. The idea that I might be talking to some old hag had crossed my mind, but she sounded young and pretty, and I guess I just wanted a look. "Is there anyone down here with you?" I asked, hearing my throat click as I said it. My throat was dry, and when I reached behind me, I felt for my water bottle and realized it had rolled off in the fall. I was thirsty, and I didn't know how long Jake would be gone. "Hey, you don't see a clear bottle anywhere in there, do you? There's water in it, and I'm very thirsty." Sitting in the sunbeam wasn't helping matters much, and I was too scared to move to go looking for my sunscreen. I wasn't in a lot of pain, but they said that neck and back injuries could be exacerbated if you moved. I lay there, frying like a fish, and I just knew I was gonna have a wicked sunburn when I finally got out of here. When the water bottle rolled out the darkness and bumped my hand, I had to stop myself from flinching away from it. I reached down, trying to move as little as possible, and as the water hit my throat, it was like pure honey. I splashed a little on my face, imagining I could hear the sizzle, and sighed in relief as I found some comfort from the heat. "Thank you," I said, looking at the darkness as if expecting to see someone peeking out at me. Silence, silence, then. "They do not find their bodies. I told you, Charles, I eat what I find in the caves." My mouth was dry again, but it had nothing to do with the heat. She had just admitted to being a cannibal, but I suppose one couldn't hold that against her either. She was trapped down here. Food was probably not plentiful. She had to survive the best way she could, but I couldn't understand how the Park Service didn't know people were going missing. How did they not collect the bodies before she got a chance to eat them? Did they just think people were lost in the park? I thought that maybe they should be a little more proactive, but then Jake's voice whispered in my head, like putting up a sign to stay off the dangerous trail. "Were you?" I tried to ask, but my tongue felt stuck to the roof of my mouth. "Were you planning to eat me?" Silence, silence, then, "Yes," she said, not showing the slightest bit of hesitation. "But you were alive and the sun was up. I usually don't find the bodies until after dark, so there's no sun to keep me away." That made me shudder. It isn't often you get to have a conversation with someone who's planning to have you for dinner. "And if the sun had been down and I was still alive," I started, but I couldn't finish the thought. I didn't have to, though. Silence, silence, then, "Yes," she said. I was quiet, not sure how to answer, but she beat me to it again. "I have to eat, Charles. All creatures must eat, and I am no exception. You don't feel weird about eating your own kind?" I asked, trying to find the right words so she wouldn't be offended. Silence, silence, then, I do not eat my own kind, Charles. I eat people. My teeth chatter a little at that. Translation: she wasn't a person, which led my mind to ask the question I dare not voice. What was she? What was I down here with? Even if my back wasn't injured, even if I wasn't paralyzed, something I was pretty sure I wasn't, I still had no way to get out. I could no more jump 30 feet than I could have tossed Jake the rope, and I was at her mercy, it seemed. She needn't wait until dusk, I thought, as I watched a cloud cruise across the mouth of the hole. If it started to rain, if it became overcast, even if some stray cloud covered my hole in shadows, it would be nothing for her to snatch me back into the darkness. It was a sobering realization to discover that your life was hanging so tenuously. "Charles?" she asked, and I heard that clicking noise getting closer. "Charles, are you okay?" I hadn't noticed until now, but her voice sounded artificial. It was like something approximating the sound of a voice, a speaker playing someone's voice from a video or something. It was a good copy, but I wanted to know what was making it. The longer I lay here, the less certain I was that she was a girl, and the more certain I was that I was talking to a monster. "Charles?" she said, and there was worry in her voice, as well as hunger. "I'm here, darling," I said, making myself answer her. I was just wool gathering. I hit my head when I came down, and it made me feel a little woozy. The clicking came even closer to the circle of light, a circle that was suddenly not nearly wide enough. "I do not know this word, woozy. What does it mean? Is it like being tired?" "Yeah," I said. "Yeah, it's a lot like being tired." I kept looking up, hoping to see Jake and the Rangers up there. How long had he been gone? It had to be at least a half hour. I couldn't imagine that no help had come in half an hour. Even if he had walked all the way back to the station at the trailhead, someone should have come back by now. I didn't know if they could stop her from dragging me off and eating me, but I hoped so. "Charles." "Yeah?" I said, hoping my voice sounded steadier than I thought it did. "Are you afraid?" I had to stop myself from answering with a Texas-sized "hell yes," since that might provoke her. "Nah, darling, why would I be scared?" The clicking came up to the edge of the light, slow and unsure, and I imagined that I could see something there, just beyond the light. A face or something, and it did not look at all human. It looked like a bad driftwood carving or a strange idol from a heathen tribe outside of civilization, and I found it hard not to stare at the spot. "Your heart is beating very fast. Your blood is pumping through your veins like a river. I can hear it. It's making me hungry. Are you afraid of me?" I opened my mouth to deny it, but that was when someone called my name and a shadow imposed itself across the light. It felt like too much, and I wanted them to move as they blotted out some of the light. "Chuck!" Jake yelled. "Are you okay?" "Sure, great," I lied, glancing over to see the face I hadn't seen was gone. Someone else cast a shadow over me and I was shaking as my light was cut in half. "Chuck, my name's Ranger Mike, and I'm here to help. Ranger Gabe and I are going to rappel down. Is your back or neck injured?" I don't think so," I yelled, listening for the clicking and the voice of the not woman. "I think I just hit my head." Mike talked to someone up there and they concurred. "We're going to drop some flares down so we don't get stuck. Close your eyes, okay?" I nodded, but there was no way in hell I was going to close my eyes with that thing around. It was strange how quickly she had become it, and how little I wanted to bring her back up with me now. I had no idea what I had been talking to, and suddenly I didn't want to know. I wanted out of this hole, out of this hell, and I promised whatever was listening that I would never scoff at signs there to keep me safe again. If they would get me out of here, I might never come back to the woods again. The flares came down, and I saw the cave was much bigger than I had thought it was. The flares sent up a ghostly light, casting everything in flickering illumination, and that was when I saw it. It was only for a second as it retreated down a side passage, but I caught a glimpse of what I had been talking to. The driftwood carving analogy wasn't far off. the whole thing looking white and thin and kind of fragile looking. It walked around on these long, thin legs that looked like nothing so much as pure bone, and its eyes were set high up on its bony forehead. It looked at me almost apologetically as it left, but the two rangers who rappelled down never so much as glanced into the cave. They had me up and on a stretcher before I could warn them, and after securing it all to ropes, they had the three of us winched up as the flares burned in the darkness below. There were more rangers at the top, paramedics too, and as they got me topside, I was dragged to stable ground and checked out by the EMTs. They said the bruise on my head was nasty, but there probably wasn't any brain damage. My spine appeared fine, though they wouldn't know for sure until I had an EKG, and my neck felt okay too. Ultimately, they said I was very lucky, and I told them they didn't know half of it. I'm in a hospital room now waiting for my EKG, but I just wanted to get this down while it was fresh. I can't prove that it wasn't a hallucination. The ER doc said I was definitely concussed, but I think it was all real. I talked with something under the ground, something that would have eaten me if it hadn't been for the light encircling me. I was extremely lucky in a lot of ways, and I thank God I made it out with little more than cuts and bruises. If I hike again, I'll be paying attention to the signs from now on. You never know what you might find just below the surface.